people who live there, who number just 330,000, affectionately call it the Rock. On that rock in the 90s, Iceland reinvented itself, the deregulated banks growing to 10 times the size of the entire country's economy. Millions of mainly Europeans invested, attracted by rates of around 15%. But as the global financial crisis exploded in 2008, the banks were seen as unsustainable. And as foreign investors scrambled to withdraw cash, they collapsed, many losing everything. The financial system only supported by loans, notably from the International Monetary Fund. The Icelandic people soon blamed the government as they took to the streets in protest. Almost every business in the country had gone bankrupt. Unemployment was soaring. A new government soon taking over.
We will honour those international agreements we have made with the IMF. It's imperative that we work closely with the IMF, and this government will do that.
Well, since then, though, a near-complete reversal of fortunes. Capital was barred from leaving the country, so people invested in local businesses. Tourism boomed due to the fall of the krona, helped as well by Iceland's volcanic eruptions in 2010 and 11. Now Iceland once again open for business. As the country struggled back on its feet, it has seen major changes in political life and in gender balance. Already, though, some beginning to warn that the economy could be overheating once again. Well, Séverine Bardon and Félix Vignier revisit Iceland for France 24.
Ten years after the crisis, the last scars of Iceland's economic collapse are slowly disappearing.
It's like traveling back in time.
Repossessed by the bank in 2008, this building that overlooks Reykjavik Bay has just been bought back by its developer.
Now we're gonna finish what we began with in 2006 or 7. It's been standing like this for 10 years, for a decade. But now we hope to bring some life to it, hopefully. This is a bit symbolic, broken.
In Iceland, the economic damage has already, for the most part, been put right. With full employment and a growth rate of 5%, the country's dynamism is enough to make its European neighbours green with envy.
There is construction everywhere and all around the city. A lot of, mostly downtown, but it's everywhere. I think it's never ever been like this before.
In Reykjavik, entire districts are springing up, as if they wanted to make up for the dark times when nothing was built. David's company has even undertaken a project aimed at foreign investors who are starting to come back to the country.
On the ground floor, we have high-end stores in all the 7 buildings. And then we have in 5 buildings, these in the back, we have apartments, high-end apartments. And in the front, we have offices. And there we're looking at embassies and law firms and so on. It's the biggest project we have been involved. It's very big.
And this is by no means the town's only big project. Just opposite, a forest of cranes shows where the country's first ever 5-star hotel is being built. A construction site that reveals the new driving force in Iceland, tourism. Unspoilt nature, breathtaking scenery. The whole world is flocking to this small island halfway between Europe and America. You're from Taiwan.
Taiwan, Taipei. We're from the United States. Connecticut. We're from Connecticut. We all go to school together.
We went to school in Connecticut.
Yeah.
We just graduated, so this is our graduation trip.
Paradoxically, Iceland owes its new popularity in part to the 2008 crisis.
The economy crashed in 2008, so heard about that.
Volcano erupted and everyone got stuck here for like 2 weeks.
The big time I heard about it really growing, it was in 2016, the Euros. I don't know, 2016 Euros. So after that, everyone kind of became a fan. I became a fan myself, so.
Last year, 2 million tourists poured into this small island of 350,000 inhabitants.
In the last few years, mainly the last two, there have been more and more groups of tourists.
This sector now represents nearly 10% of the GDP. It ensures the country has a regular income of foreign currency. If tourists are the visible face of the changes Iceland has seen since 2008, the main fallout from the crisis is much deeper. The collapse of the economy gave rise to a social and political crisis of conscience, which continues to affect the country. And it all began in this building with this man, Public Prosecutor Ólafur Hauksson.
Yes. You know, in this white box we have the criminal cases, the case file, what is you know, gathered in the combination of the investigation and what's gathered for the prosecution. It's kind of a scary thing, this amount of papers working on. It's a lot of work behind all these boxes.
Iceland is the only country in the world that has taken legal action against its bankers. 25 convictions, including imprisonment, have been handed down for manipulation of the markets and fraud.
We were in the middle of the aftermath of the crisis, and all resources, including money, of course, was needed almost everywhere in our society at the time. But it was decided to put a lot of effort into this task, and it was done so. It was a political decision. The budget of an office of this kind is decided by the parliament. We have still 6 cases pending, and I want to complete them. I want to see the start and the end of this journey.
After 10 years of criminal procedures, the judicial process is coming to an end. But the social and political turmoil is still being felt. Since the crisis, the Icelanders have been keeping a close eye on their leaders.
The wealthiest pay less property tax and less financial taxes.
The Green leftists always refer to the middle-income group when they speak of inequality, whereas in fact they should go much further.
Yes, you're right.
Sara and Sindri are in some way the embodiment of this new civil society, a society that's disgusted by the crisis and is not afraid to say so. In 2016, these 2 young activists brought together nearly 10% of the Icelandic population outside the parliament building. The demonstration led to the downfall of the Prime Minister, who was implicated in the Panama Papers.
We as individuals, we as the people, we're looking at the elected officials and the banking industry and all the people that were supposed to be more than us, and we were now suddenly in the shoes as a parent going, okay, this party needs to stop now. And yeah, so definitely the economic crisis was the ground zero, so to speak, in terms of what we were doing.
Yeah, people had waited long enough. You know, they had taken a lot of the responsibility of the crash upon themselves by agreeing to have, you know, lower pay, working more, etc., etc. And it just felt to people that, you know, nothing had changed, things weren't getting better, and I think that was a big issue for the.
After their 2016 triumph, these activists went into politics. Today, Sara is a member of parliament for the Pirate Party. In parliament, she defends the ideas of this anti-establishment group that was born out of the crisis and that turned the Icelandic political landscape upside down.
Mr. President, when we speak of equality in Iceland, we often consider only average values. The problem is that average values do not reflect the reality of the inequalities among the citizens.
Governed for decades by coalitions of the centre-right, Iceland is now going through a period of political instability.
Mr. President, I thank the honourable member for raising that important question, even though I find her vision too pessimistic.
Katrín Jakobsdóttir is the third Prime Minister appointed in less than a year. The elected officials have lost the trust of the population, and one government follows another without ever being convincing.
We have planned an important budget for reform of the tax system, and we are hoping that it will fit the aims of this government. But each and every one will have to make an effort if it is to succeed.
Generally considered before the crash to be the happiest country in the world, Iceland has since fallen off all the podiums. But there is one question on which the island stands as a model for all: the place of women in society.
The topics we are going to discuss are of high importance, not just for the well-being of women, but also for the welfare of families, and men are not excluded.
In Reykjavik, delegates from about 15 countries are considering the equality of men and women in their societies.
Systems and health insurance.
They are eagerly awaiting the contribution from the representative of Iceland's Ministry of Social Affairs.
8 strands of actions and 20 actions.
I wanted to introduce to you a new administrative tool that we have worked on and introduced in Iceland and even legislated on. And it has brought us worldwide attention for being some kind of a feminist equality heaven. What we are maybe not yet.
It's been quite embarrassing for some of the big...
Last January, Iceland passed legislation obliging companies to pay equal salaries for men and women or risk fines. A small social revolution which raises a lot of questions for those taking part in the seminar.
So what do we have to... How can we get employers on board and make them do these things?
Yes, it's a really good question. I think it's incorporated into our the Nordic model that we and the bargaining model in the labor market. Also, employers do understand that gender equality is important for companies and all organizational units. Yes.
Thank you, Rosa.
For 9 years, the island has topped the rankings on gender equality set up by the World Economic Forum. And the crash is not unconnected with this rise in power for Icelandic women.
There's a conversion of the responsibility before the standard.
You can say that it was an eye-opener for many people. For example, that economic and business life was almost entirely ruled by men. And in 2010, we got a gender quota provision by law that obligates both state institutions and private companies to have at least 40% of each sex among the board members. So you could say that that was a product of the crisis, because the business life and the banking life, it was a very homogenic world. Yes.
Since then, Iceland has shaken up its elites. Women are everywhere, at the heads of banks and government. Even the Protestant state church is now led by a woman bishop, and a divorced one at that. Sarah, the pirate MP, has also benefited from this groundswell. No one in Iceland is surprised anymore to see a young mother of 4 with political ambitions.
Þetta ótrúlega flott. Ekki? Má ég fá pensil hjá þér? There's definitely empowerment, and I feel it's kind of becoming very obvious in the fact that women are very, well, what's the word? Kind of sprightly, you know. They're very, they're like volcanoes, you know. There's like new ideas coming, and they're, you know, going into new territories and breaking down walls. I see that happening. to a larger extent than with men, I think.
Iceland has opened up to new ideas, carried along by individuals who are quite prepared to break the codes. Sarah, whose work is regularly exhibited in Europe, gets her political inspiration from her painting.
I wouldn't have painted this like this if you know what was happening in the politics wasn't happening. I would have done some other type of painting, and also this is going to be in my mind when I speak in the podium next week. This image, this is the effect I want. I'm going to be angry.
Presented since the crisis as a political and social testing ground, Iceland has perhaps not conquered all the demons that led it to the brink of bankruptcy. But it has at least had the courage to take a new look at itself.
Séverine Bardon and Félix Vignier revisiting Iceland for France 24. Well, that's all for this week's edition. Don't forget, of course, you can catch it and all the previous editions as well on our website at france24.com. Thanks very much for watching. More news coming up very shortly.